So this is Ruthie, and I'm going to be reading from Molly O'Keefe's Wild Child. And in this scene, the heroine has just received oral sex from the hero, and she's about to give it to him, so that's exciting. But this is my favorite part of the book. "You hungry?" he asked when she didn't move. "There's chicken around here somewhere." He sat up, and only then did she have the courage to look at him. The muscles of his back were a thick, rippling fan under his smooth skin, and finally, because he wasn't looking at her, she could touch him. She shifted, moved, curled herself around him, her legs along the outside of his, her arms around his chest, her face to his spine. She kissed him there, a dozen small kisses, and he arched against her. Blind, her hands explored the territory from his chest to the ridges and ankles of his stomach, down to the waistband of his boxers. She slipped her hand inside and found him unbelievably hard, the head of him damp. He hissed, grabbed her hand, and pressed it hard against him. "Sorry," he muttered, and lifted his palm, bracing his hands against her legs instead. Oh, fuck. Monica, please, touch me." And she did, hard, soft, with both hands. She squeezed his sack, teased the tip, listened to him groan and curse, and felt him shake against her. His head fell back, resting against hers, and she felt so connected to him just then, more connected to a man than she'd ever been, and she couldn't bear to leave it at that. Couldn't bear to hold him off with one hand while jacking him off with the other. She moved, quick and sudden, sliding around to the front of him. There was no room on the corner of the bed his legs straddled, and she fell to her knees on the carpet. "What?" he asked, his eyes gone, his face flushed. He was so close, and he would never have asked for this, and so it became a gift, cheerfully given. "This," she whispered, and slipped him into her mouth. He touched her cheek, her hair, fell back against the bed, and held her hand where it rested on his thigh. He twined her fingers with his, and she didn't like that. Didn't want that. How totally fucked up of her that she could have his dick in her mouth, but holding his hand was too much. She slipped her hand away from his, building her speed and pressure, making him jerk and swear against her. It didn't take long. She knew he was painfully turned on, and within seconds he exploded in her mouth, his feet lifting off the ground, his body jackknifing and curling around her, a cocoon of heat and skin and affection and mutual desire. The safest place she'd ever been. So of course she sat back, breaking the moment, the connection. It took her a second to catch her breath, to put at least some part of herself back together in a way that was familiar to her, recognizable to her. But finally she was able to look up and smile, resurrecting all of her sauciness, her flippancy, while inside there was a cleanup crew sweeping up after the mess of all her walls coming down. "Well," she said, bright and shiny, as if she'd just opened a bank account instead of having the most intimate moment of her life. "You said something about chicken?" He laughed, a big, deep belly laugh, the kind that blew back the walls and cracked the ceiling, while at the same time rebuilding that cocoon, locking the two of them into an experience, a shared moment. Panicked, she scrambled to her feet, pushed down her skirt, and found at the foot of the bed the underwear he'd pulled off of her. "I didn't bring any drinks." He took his time getting dressed, stretching, smiling, totally comfortable. She looked away, averting her eyes from the golden skin stretched over sleek muscles. "Leave," she thought. "Please, just leave." He opened the bag, unleashing a whole new wave of the fried chicken smell, and then spread things out as if they were going to have a picnic. "I got you a leg." Sorry, my Kindle. Turn the page. When he handed it to her, she thought about not taking it, about making up some lie about work and then sitting down at her computer until he got the message. But she was starving. Could she ask him to go, but leave the chicken with her? In a backlash of terrible memory, she remembered visiting a guitar player's room with pizza and a six-pack. They'd had sex, rough sex, something she pretended to like while the whole time she'd been thinking about the pizza, getting cold on the dresser. When it was over and she had pulled on her clothes, he told her to take a slice and go. At the time, the pizza had been cold and she'd been pissed. But now, looking back on it from this new place where she was standing, the whole scene was horrible, vile, and there was no way she could do that to Jackson. Begrudgingly, she took the chicken leg, thick and crusty, still warm. She could feel the care that Cora had taken, the love that she'd fried right into the meat. "If I stay in this town too long, I'm going to get fat," Monica said. She opened the minibar. "There's beer," she said. "Perfect." She handed the bottle to him by the neck. "We can share." He opened the beer, took a sip, and handed it to her. "I'm good." She sat in the office chair at her desk and bit a tiny piece of crust off the chicken. It was delicious, of course. Without a doubt, the best small bite of fried chicken she'd ever had, and her instinct was to set it down, push it away, like anything good that might roll up on the shores of her island. "How's your work going?" he asked, pointing at the stacks of paper beside the bed. "You don't want to talk about that," she said, largely because she didn't want to talk about it. "I find myself interested in all parts of you, Monica." This was the reality of letting someone in, of the lesson Jenna's death had truly taught her. As hard as it might be, being alone, it was hard learning how to be with someone, too. She just had to decide which was harder. "Being alone," her heart answered. "It's going fine," she lied. "You know, you can just say, I don't really want to talk about it." He was grinning at her from the bed, so happily oblivious to all the landmines between them, the landmines in her. I have never in my life been happily oblivious. She was always totally aware of the broken edges in people and situations, all the silent and hidden expectations that waited in the dark for her to fail, for her to be too much herself or not enough. But he sat there as though whoever she was at this very moment was just fine. There was a long, slow unraveling of what remained of her distrust, her suspicion. It wasn't comfortable sitting there, but she had the deep, abiding sense that it was necessary for her moving on with her life.